process for painting the cylinder is pretty similar to painting the spheres, except instead of having a completely white highlight, you're just going to have a lighter version of whatever your base color is. You don't want it to be quite as intense as the highlighted area or on the spheres. So, here I am. I've skipped to the part where I've already laid down the base color, and now I'm just kind of laying in the highlight. So I spread that around, get that in place, just touching up, brightening it up a little bit, and then you'll just proceed to kind of spread that out, dry brush it out, fade out the edge as it fades into the middle area. Another thing you're going to see me constantly do throughout this is adjust the value of what I'm painting. I constantly kind of go in. Once you get the paint on the surface, it looks different than it does when you have it mixed on the palette. So once I spread it out on there, and then I sit back and realize it's not quite as bright as I want it. So here I'm repainting it again, a little bit brighter, and spreading that out. The other thing that I work on in this is doing some wet and wet. So here I'm using a small brush, but I'm actually spreading this out more of a wet on wet approach. And again, for a third time here now, brightening up my highlight. As it dries, too, it loses a little of its brilliancy. So once that happens, you may realize that you need to adjust the color, or the value I should say, or it could be the color, but in this case it's just the value. So I spread that out, and then taking some of my original color, even though it looks lighter, this is the original base color. Again, you can see the difference of what it looks like when it's wet versus it's dry, and then I'm blending that into the light side using, again, kind of a little X pattern stroke, blending it in with the highlight. And then what I'm going to do is spread the middle value across here towards the shadow side, and then I'm going to grab some of my shadow color, spread that out, get that laid down, and then I'm going to blend that into the middle value, again while they're both wet, so that I get a little bit different look to your blending, a little bit different approach. Again, if you're going to use the wet and wet, you have to have your paints ready to go. You have to be prepared to work quickly, so that, especially with acrylic paints, they're still wet. You get that nice soft blending. And I apologize for my hand being in the way, blocking a lot of what I'm painting. I didn't realize that till afterwards, because I was working small and so up close, my hand got close, so it's blocking a lot of it. Now in successive videos that I've made, I have my camera at a different angle coming from the left side so that my hand isn't right in the middle. Hopefully you can see enough of this to get the idea, and this is really the technique. I guess I'm kind of demonstrating the wet and wet approach. I didn't realize afterwards that I had painted these cylinders using the wet on wet approach, because I videotaped or recorded video of painting all three, and I did not use this approach on all three. I did each one a little bit different, because I wasn't sure at the time which way I wanted you guys to paint, or at least my beginning painting students. But this does at least afford you the opportunity to see two different approaches, the dry brush approach or the wet on wet approach. And this last one I decided to just kind of focus on painting the top of the cylinder, because there's just this very light value as the light sort of skims across the top of the cylinder. So I'm just taking a very thinned out version of my lightest value of this green color, and I spread it pretty thin, which you can't see off screen here. Spreading it out pretty thin on my background canvas. so that I just have a little bit on my brush, and I just kind of spread that around, almost like, it's almost with such a small brush, it's almost like you're working with colored pencil. In essence, you get just a little bit on the brush. It takes a little bit longer, it takes a little bit of patience, in painting like this, because you're just building it up very faintly, and it takes several strokes. Obviously, I've sped up the camera here. I think this video is only about 6 minutes long, but originally it was probably twice that long when I first shot it. So just wanted this came out a little bit better. My hand wasn't blocking it as much, so that's why I used the top of this green cylinder to demonstrate that versus doing that on the purple cylinder.